Today, I get to introduce you to Cathy Steele, founder and CEO of Red Caffeine, and someone I've been lucky to call both a friend and mentor. Our conversation centers around potential, how we see it in others, in organizations, and in ourselves, and what it really takes to bring it to life. Cathy shares insights from her years helping businesses grow through clarity and focus, and opens up about how she's built a life that feels both ambitious and deeply fulfilling. We explore why vision matters, how to know if you're truly leaning into your highest potential, and why gratitude is at the heart of a life fully lived. I'm your host, Katherine Jelinek, and this is the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform, the place for entrepreneurs with something to share and who want to be heard. Hello, everyone. I am so excited today to get to introduce you to a woman who has been a friend and a mentor to me for many, many years now, which is, I'm very lucky. That's awesome on my part that it's been many years. Cathy Steele. Welcome, Cathy. She is the founder and CEO of Red Caffeine, which is a growth consultancy. And we'll ask her right away what that means. But welcome, Cathy.
Thank you, Catherine. It's so awesome to spend this time with you today. And I also admire you so much. I literally look up to you. You're so statuesque and tall and beautiful. But I look up to you, because you are just such a good soul as well. So thank you for having me.
Oh, Cathy, it takes one to know one there, girlfriend. Thank you. Okay, so everybody today, first we'll ask Cathy to explain growth consultancy, and that ties right into today's topic, which is all around potential and expressing and identifying the potential in people and in companies. So quick pause, Cathy, Red Caffeine being a growth consultancy, what does that mean?
Well, I think, in its simplest terms, we help organizations grow. To kind of add on to that, we work a lot in the mid-market with organizations that are, really trying to get to a next stage, or they're facing some type of situation in their business that they want to overcome. So many times we are getting involved when sales are lagging or somebody wants to launch a new product or service. But recently we're getting into situations where there's a lot of change going on in the organization. They may be prepping to go through a transaction, so needing to mature their sales and marketing so that they get a higher valuation. Post a sale, we're helping businesses integrate, so combining capabilities and cultures and all those things. So growth, and change is kind of the business that we're in.
Growth and change. I feel like those pair well with the idea of potential. So then,
Absolutely.
yeah. So my first question is, what do you consider your definition of potential? When you think about potential, what does that
Ugh.
actually mean?
I think potential is sort of seeing somebody or something in yourself where you are now, and then where you can be. We have used visioning for a really, really long time in helping someone or an organization see the future state that they want to be at, I've used visioning for people that want to see some personal growth. So I think that's sort of the delta of here's where I'm at, here's where I want to go, and the kind of the potential is what happens in between.
Hmm. That's a good and very simple way of demonstrating potential. I appreciate that.
It's
So then
it's
let's,
complex,
yeah.
it's complex because I think for the hardest thing for me, love that you bring up potential is that times you see potential in others, or even if you're working with an organization, you see how much potential they have. Potential is something that you really have to do yourself, to get to your potential. You can have people help you, but you definitely have to want to evolve and change to get you to your full potential. So it's sometimes difficult to see potential in others and not see them strive for that potential.
Yeah, I want to dig into all of that because I feel like there's such a difference when it's your potential and then when it's anything outside of you. There's something else going on with like control, surrender, agency, and what you even can do. My first stop on this is I want to ask about potential in businesses
Sure.
because you've had so much experience like seeing and working with it and trying to help companies really claim the whole space of that delta. So, how can you tell when a company, has much more potential than maybe they can see? And tell us about how you can tell when the company's really actualizing on that,
Sure.
or really falling short. What are the signs of that in a company?
So I think that potential is kind of narrowing the focus. So again, similar to what I mentioned, understanding the vision of the organization is typically where we start. And we love to get out those aspirational aspects of what the leadership team or the business wants to achieve. But then we sort of 360 it. We talk to customers or and employees, and we look at the market landscape and we really validate, do they have that potential? How do they sort of tweak where they think they need to go or they think they could go to make sure that they can fully realize their potential? So it's really looking at things from a pretty holistic standpoint when we're talking about businesses, and then trying to get them to narrow focus because there's a lot of opportunity for growth. And I think what you see organizations doing sometimes is focusing on every way to grow versus sort of narrowing how they're going to grow and sort of picking a lane or two to focus on so that they can really, make some measurable steps in the right direction.
Yeah, you're so right. It's so interesting how, like, if a company really narrows in on that one thing and they shoot for it, they almost like gather up so many other things, but they stay steady and they can
Like a
actualize. But if they're thinking about trying to gather up all the other things, they never gain that like velocity to really move forward.
Exactly, and to your point, right, once you start to make steps in a direction, opportunities are gonna come your way, and then you have to decide, are we gonna lean into that opportunity? Is that something we need to put, off for 6 months or a year to really fully get to where we said we were gonna go? So I think once you start in a direction and you are a little bit more focused, it's easier to elect to do something opportunistic or push something off that might be a bright shiny object for you. Sounds fun. Most organizations want to grow, but there are times where um, we have gotten into situations where I walk away thinking, yeah, this is not this organization should be sold. They don't have the thinking, they don't have the leadership, they're not going to make the changes necessary to really get past where they are currently, and maybe be better served by younger leadership or new thinking to get the business into that next stage of growth. So I do feel like there's things that we learn in the early discovery with clients that will give us indications that they've got high potential for growth, but also give us indications of where those barriers might exist that are going to limit them. In and a lot of times it's leadership's unwillingness to change.
Mm. Okay, you're hitting on a few things I want to dig into. So when you see in a company and you go in and you can just tell, like, there's just you don't see the potential because there's too much bringing it in almost. There's too many forces, especially from people, like not allowing the company to really actualize or express itself. You kind of know that it needs to just be sold. It's interesting that you're saying, it sounds like what you're saying, the biggest curtailing to any organization's potential is obviously the people, especially the leadership.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it starts at the top. In very few organizations, you have enough of ownership mentality at sort of the front lines in order to drive change. It has to. I don't believe it's solely about leadership, but leadership has to be willing to change or willing to do something different or willing to take a little bit of a risk in order to, to have a breakthrough. It doesn't typically happen super organically without that aspiration of something different.
Hmm. What I also heard you say when you were explaining company potential earlier is, you go through and you look at the organization holistically, and you are taking a look at the different people, players, the customers, the employees, and I almost heard you sharing that you're like assessing if they align with that possible trajectory of the company.
Right. I mean, so a lot of times people throw out, very significant growth numbers, but they don't really have any idea of that there's truly potential for growing. So to be able to kind of do that 360, get customer sentiment, get um, is there enough market opportunity? Is the market ready for this type of product or service or organization? Is there a vertical that they're not in that would be opportune for this type of growth? Is there a geography that is opportune? So like those are all the indications that make it feasible and give us, the validation that there's truly opportunity to go after. But if you don't really look at some of those outsider factors beyond what the internal team thinks is possible, I think it really limits, what you're seeing and your ability to help them, point them in the right direction, I guess, and guide them.
So I could totally see going in and like leadership team has an idea for this grand vision, and then you're meeting employees and customers, and you're like, oh, you need to change things in order to actually get there. Like the current people and customers you have aren't going to make it there with you. But have you ever seen in your experience the opposite, in a way where the company doesn't even see a greater potential that you can obviously see that's available to them?
All the time. It's really hard. It's kind of like what we said in the beginning, in seeing potential for others or seeing potential in organizations and they don't want to change or invest. That's challenging. It's challenging to people that have a growth mindset. I assume that it's challenging to work for those types of organizations. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people that love mediocrity and status quo and just getting a paycheck. But most people that I, have had the pleasure of working with do want to have continuous learning and continuously new opportunities to try different things. And so when you've got a culture like that, it's really hard to kind of limit that as a leadership. I think that's where you'll see some attrition in your staff because they're going to go to other places that are going to give them those opportunities to do new things and learn.
So that sounds like one signal that leaders can kind of be keeping an eye on. W- Attrition, signals as to like how to know if you are leaving some potential on the table, if something's out there that you're not totally seeing but others might. Like attrition could be one. What else? How can a business know, how can leaders know if their business has more potential than they really are seeing themselves?
Well, I think it tends to show up in declining sales. I think that's probably one of the first metrics that you're starting to see is that either what you're offering is not matching market demand any longer, or you have such a vanilla position that you're starting to see other players start to, eat away at your market share. Those are signals, I think, that show that you're in a declining or potentially declining state and you may need to look at kind of putting a market message out there that differentiates you, to start to move past some of these competitors, or you really do have to evolve your offering or evolve your product line to meet the market demand. That's though I think that would be one of the largest triggers that we see is in and around sales data and performance.
Hmm. I love that you're saying it doesn't necessarily mean you've got an awful business, pull the plug. It means that you might just be pointed in the wrong direction, and that there's something you're missing that would
Yeah,
be.
but I mean, there are bad ideas and there are businesses that are like losing market share. They haven't invested in technology or invested in modernization of their operations. And that, there I've been in meetings where I've said, I don't think you have a feasible path forward. I have, you know, asked people to think differently about how they're going to go to market because we're not seeing the same opportunities based on data and and information, and it's just not being validated. Sometimes I'm wrong, but a lot of times that we've been, dead on, and they haven't been able to make a go of that idea or new offering or new service.
Well, I think I'm about to move into the people part here, but I think one of the most key things on both the company people and people side is the need for outside reflection and mirrors, because you can't always see it yourself when it's yours, you know?
100%. I mean, I think that's why many leaders join peer groups, associations, because there's just so many ways to think about things, and somebody can take a look at something that you've been struggling with for years and have a way to solve it in hours, and it was right in front of you, but because you're, for many a variety of reasons, you're just not in the mindset to kind of see the forest through the trees, I guess would be the analogy.
Yeah. And I think what you're getting to there is the power of shared experiences, which comes from experience only, and
Right, right.
experience of seeing so many different companies and all these different situations that they've been through. So it's, being able to just identify, oh, this signals this, I've seen this before, and calling out some of the things they might not be privy to, you know?
It's just like a fresh set of eyes. It's that's the value of having a great peer network or joining a forum of leaders that are in a similar situation to you. I think you fast track what you can do as a leader just because you're hearing perspectives on all the same things that you're going through as a business. So it doesn't always have to be hiring somebody in. It can be, making sure that you're surrounding yourself with other growth minded thinkers.
Definitely. So let's move into the people part too, because
Sure.
obviously we've already been talking about people, but more directly through organizations. And now, when, Cathy, you get to see people walk into your life, and those who really strike us as like, wow, I can see that you can really do something here. Like, people we see a lot of potential in. In your experience, how do you actually support that in a meaningful way? Because for me, that's can be so frustrating, because you can't control another person's experience, nor do we want to, but it's challenging to know how to help elevate another when we see something in them in a way that's actually meaningful.
I think it is extremely difficult. And um, but I also think it is, there's some onus on the person too. So, I think you can do things like give them opportunities to connect with people that are a few years down the road from where they're at in their career. If they're thinking about something, you can give them leadership opportunities without giving them a leadership title. You can let them try new things with some frameworks that you set up for them so that they're not set up to fail, that they're set up to succeed. So there's a lot of ways to set somebody up for growth. I do feel like in the last few years, leaders have been faced with questions like, where do you see my career going? And, what's my next step? And I always feel very confused by that question because I feel like that is something that has to be driven by you and not your boss or your manager or your somebody in your network. I think you have to do your own amount of discovery and ask for certain opportunities. But for me, I think when I see potential in people, I'm just so excited to give them more opportunities to learn and grow, uh, and getting better at giving them more structure on how to do it. Because I think sometimes in my earlier career, it's like, well, here's the assignment. Good luck. Now it's we're a little bit more, um, we're a little bit better about setting people up with some mentorship, some coaching, some frameworks to use in order to do something new that they haven't done in the past.
Hmm, that's good. Yes, standards are always helpful. And also, on the side of that, though, is those who are really going to actualize their potential probably can handle the open field or.
Just being drinking from a fire hose, yes, for sure. I've had the privilege of working with tons of brilliant people over my career that are super resourceful and just need, somebody to collaborate with sometimes, and but they're completely self-starters.
So, for the younger generation that might be listening and, they hear you say that question that people are asking leaders right now, people like bosses and things that, where do you see my career going? What should the question be instead?
I guess I think the question should come from a place of you've done a little bit of diligence on your own. I have really enjoyed this aspect of my role. Some of the people that I went to college with or worked with in this other position, uh, had this role, and I'd love some opportunity to do something outside of my core role now. What are those opportunities to give me a chance to try some new things so that I can vet out that I could be good at this? This is a strength that I had. This is something that I enjoy doing 40 plus hours a week. Those to me are the things that I'd want somebody to come to the table with me, and then I could help them navigate career paths or introduce them to mentors. Those are the kind of the next steps that I think you could take, or within our organization, see that there's an opportunity coming up that they may be able to participate in, but not have to take a leadership role. So be able to shadow somebody else and get a preview of what doing that type of work could look like for them.
Yeah, that was what was going through my mind too. Is just at least being able to identify areas that you feel like you really love, where you want to spend more time, where you've got more natural flow. And if you're able to highlight that and then take it to a seasoned leader like yourself, like of course you're going to be like, "Oh, this means you might be able to do this and this and hop into this part of our business." And
Yeah,
yeah.
I think so few people come out of college or high school or, a training program and know exactly what they want to do and then end up doing exactly what they thought they would be doing. In our space, I always love to advise younger leaders or younger up and coming people to try working, within at a client, try working in an agency environment where you're working with a lot of different opportunities and clients, working at a small organization and a larger organization. Large organizations just have way more bandwidth for training and potential kind of professional development that smaller organizations don't always have, but small organizations have true opportunities to try, to get your hands dirty, do a job, and get an experience. So I think there's validity in all types of kind of career exploration. And you don't always have to do it on the job. You could take a volunteer opportunity and use it as a learning and development opportunity to try something new that you're not currently getting to do in your current role. So there's a lot of ways to try before you buy in terms of your career progression.
Yes, there are definitely just entrepreneurial spirit and a little enthusiasm can get you pretty far.
Exactly, exactly. Fake it till you make it. I know it's not a business term, but it should be.
Mm, yeah, and even the people who you think aren't faking it, if they're trying new things, they are too, like,
Ex exactly. I think we all feel that, we should know more. We should know the answer to things. Thank goodness we have the tools at our disposal to learn things quickly. I mean,
right.
it's what an evolution from my early career where I would get out of a meeting and be like, I just promised something. Now I got to go to the library and learn how to do that one thing that I promised I could do. So there's just so much knowledge at our fingertips today. So the learning curve is a lot shortened, but there's still nothing to me that gives you the true aspect of what it could be is doing the job, is really getting in and learning by doing.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think this relates to our conversation. Because in the age of AI, perfect information can be everywhere now. But what isn't is wisdom. Like that, I've failed and seen it year after year being a human, not just a repository of data. And that's the big difference. Like when I'm hearing you talk about those peer forums and getting engaged in places where you can be surrounded by other people who have walked is some part or piece of the journey you're walking. It's just, yeah, that what you're getting is not perfect information as much as it's almost the failures and the vulnerabilities. And that's becoming even more valuable because that's what AI can't give us. You know?
I mean, totally. And I don't think that changed before, AI was not available and so accessible to all of us. But I feel like the school of hard knocks is the school. I mean, that's really where you learn things. And the disadvantage of younger people is that they have just not lived through those experiences. So, to me, that's when you do lean into others. And I have this client with this specific issue, and who do we know that might be able to give us some perspective on it. I think that's the way a younger leader, a younger person would be looking at it. Like, how do I capture knowledge that I didn't have the experience of and be able to leverage that knowledge? It just takes time to build all those stories, time to build all those experiences. So the only way to fast track is to kind of pull in others when you get faced with something that you've never done before or heard about before, so that you can provide a solution without relying on technology to produce your thinking for you.
Yeah. And combining the two, right? Being able to like ask AI, but then also get the seasoned perspective from the people who've been there and done that. Combining that because it's the blend of I think it comes down to what you're getting from people is always like how to deal with people, you know? And the
Right.
experiences that they've had with handling customers or other team members or crazy demands and it's just the people side is still always going to be our well, who knows, but for now it's still the place where being present and thoughtful and emotionally intelligent, right, Cathy, is like some of the things that we're still needed for.
Oh, I don't think relationships are relationships. I was just at a networking event this morning, and I was so pleased to see that there was a college student in attendance. She was interning at a firm here in Chicago. There was another young woman, early stage career, and she's like, I've hardly even built my LinkedIn network. And I I just was like, oh my gosh, that is the best thing you can do is start to build those network connections now. And the beauty of a LinkedIn is it's always, no matter where somebody goes, they're always part of your network. And I can't tell you how many times it's been 15 years and somebody says, oh my gosh, this morning I was just at an event, like this woman saw me speak probably 5 or 6 years ago. And it's just so random. But, you know, you have this networking and collecting great relationships. It's like an art and science. So you know that you just never know when you're going to have somebody ask you for something and the light bulb goes on, and it might be 5 years, 10 years down the road. But like how incredible is it to be able to like reach back into, you know, the Wayback Machine and pull somebody out of your network that could help serve somebody else. So I just, the power of relationship building, I don't believe it will go away. And I love that we're tech enabled by tools like LinkedIn that's, you know, allow us to not lose track of those relationships, even if it's been a long time since you've seen somebody or talked to somebody.
Mm-hmm. And being able to build a solid network from like authentic connections, actually enjoying people is a huge piece, I think, in actualizing one's own potential.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know what the statement is, but it's I always I'm a tennis player, so I much would rather play with people that are better than me, that can kick my butt, and because I'm learning, like I'm trying harder. I am learning some new ways to approach shots and such. And I think that's just like anything. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to be surrounded by other brilliant thinkers because they inspire you. You learn something. Maybe you contribute too. But I always would much rather be around the smarticles or whatever we want to call them, the smartest people in the room.
Yeah, I feel you there. I feel like in jujitsu, I'm always getting my butt kicked by the upper belts, and I feel like the key to enjoying the sport and survival is to have a smile on your face after someone's totally dominated you. Like, be like, all right,
Yes.
I survived. I'm here. It's
Well, I
great.
mean, you know, there's something beautiful about doing something well, but maybe not winning. Like I'm always happy what by a good performance versus a winning performance, I guess is the way I look at it. If I'm incrementally getting better at something, I don't always care that the score did not go my way. So
Mm.
I think in business, you have to think of like that too. Sometimes you lose something you really want, or a deal goes, you know, in a different direction, and you just have to learn from it and try and incrementally improve.
Okay, so this gets us into our final chapter here, the potential within ourselves, you know? And the first question in general is how do you identify when you're leaning into that potential, your own highest potential? How do you know that? And versus like
Gosh.
kind of leaning into your shortcomings. And I'm going to just background this for everyone that I observe that Cathy, in my opinion, you are a person who you really live into life. Like you're really like taking the life for all its juice. Like you've got like such a full life, you know, like leading your company and doing it for so many years, so many different iterations, and such a full life personally, and the two are very integrated. It just feels like to me you're just like solidly leaning in always. So in terms of a person who's like participating in their potential, you're definitely right there. And it's but what are your thoughts on one's own potential and how to know if you're, you know, not
Well,
taking.
gosh, I wish I saw a 25-year-old woman that she's just like a just total badass. But so yesterday she kind of EOS'd her personal life, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like her BTO. Like if you know anybody that knows EOS would understand. And I'm thinking, gosh, at 25 to have EOS'd my life, that would have been a beautiful, very intentional way. So, but I think for me, um, I really focus on what's important to me, and then I make a way, or I make room to experience that regardless whether it's work or play. I am very intentional about like who I'm with and how I spend my time. I love to work. People think I'm nuts sometimes, but I love what we do. And so I make time for work. I make time for growing the business. I make time for thinking visionary things. I enjoy that so much. I make time to have conversations with clients to understand what's going on in their organizations and what their aspiration and visions are like. But I also make time for my personal life, and I have a very incredible family that I love to hang out with. And so I make a lot of time for them. I make a lot of time for friends. I like make a lot of time for golf and tennis and boating and, spending time in warm weather. So it's like a harmonious blend of the things that I prioritize or I want to do most. That's just how I live my life. And I hear people say a lot of times, well, my kids are young and I can't really fit that in. And I personally just don't buy it. I think you're a healthier person when you have time for you baked into giving time to your children. If you feel like the life is sucked out of you because you have no time for yourself, how are you really showing up for your job or your spouse or whatever? I think you have to find balance. And that doesn't mean I'm always in balance. Saying no is a very difficult thing for me. So I'm trying to get better at taking my hand down when there's an ask for a volunteer. I'm trying to just put a little more time into being still and not having every minute filled on a weekend. Very this is newer for me, but yeah. So I think, there's a way to orchestrate the life you want, but you have to really decide like what's the most important to you, because there's many things I could add on to what I'm currently doing. But for me, I kind of focus on what I like to do personally and family and friends, the business, and then travel and sports are there are my other two buckets.
Oh God, I love it. Okay, so what I hear, and everybody just, it's this making space for the things that delight you. Because none
Yeah,
of these were you talking about with any energy of like burden or, requirement, even though there's definitely some of those things in there, but
of
that's not
course.
how you see them. That's not how you experience them overall. You were talking about, I love this and I make space for it. And I love this and I make space for it. And how could you not be living into more of your max potential when you're expressing through the things that you love and knowing that you have space for them, rather than feeling like your life is full of the things that you must do. Like it's just it could be even a matter of perspective, but just hearing that from you is really sinking. Like it's delight. You exist in delight.
It is a happy state of living. Now, not everyone has a job they love, and I would say change it. I think that was like one of the best things I did early in my career, where I felt like I was working on the chain gang. I was like all excited to come to work. It was my first like real job out of the restaurant industry, and everyone else seemed like they were serving a life sentence. And I looked around and I would say to myself, like, they don't have to be here. So it just stunned me that people would stay in a job they hated so much. Like, why? Like, you're not bringing anything to the company, and you got to go home and just be crabby and miserable there too. So, there are ways, I mean, there are decisions you have to make to get to a life where you are experiencing delight. And sometimes it's not easy, but I'll tell you, I just, I really get up every day excited to go to work. I, put things in my day that give me pleasure and make me think and allow me to learn. And sometimes it's really hectic, but I don't come home feeling regretful of any of those time investments because they're bringing me a lot of joy.
Mm. Well, we all do have 24 hours in a day and we all do fill them, no matter if we consider ourselves busy or not. But what you do in terms of filling, and yes, hectic, but it's full of things that fill you up for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's a huge difference between someone who might feel busy, but it's a lot of things that are the requirements that they trudge on, that the pushing them along rather than like, oh, yes, power up. Yes, tennis. Oh, yes, forum, whatever it is.
Well, I mean, people comment on my schedule because a lot of people look at my calendar and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And yeah, sometimes I put too much in my day for sure. Like, and I am exhausted at the end of the day. But for the most part, I try and strike a balance between physicality and social and work, and so I feel still good by the end of the week. But I do have a lot more energy than others sometimes. So I think you have to build a life. You shouldn't mirror my life if that's you don't have that same ability to manage so many things and take it down a notch. But that doesn't mean you're not enjoying every minute of your life because you don't have anything on your schedule or you do have things on your schedule. I always feel like people like look at my schedule sometimes and I'm like, I feel guilty. I'm like, it's fine. I actually, this is how I operate best. Don't feel bad for me because it's sometimes how I operate best.
Hmm. I love that though, but you've gotten to know how you operate best, you know?
Yeah, I guess I have. Interesting.
Well, we all need that. Like I'm not quite I need a little more space. I do. But right now I'm in a season where there's a lot going on, but it actually is all things that are very energizing. So I resonate with what you're sharing about it's all kind of like relatively a power up and things I'm choosing, rather than feeling like it's something that's a burden. Um yeah, but it also takes time to really understand how you work best.
I'm sure that, like I said, I wish I could go back to the 25-year-old me and be so much more purposeful around how I did things. It's really been probably the last maybe 20 years where I really feel like I've gotten the recipe into a place where I really feel good about all the things that are going on, all the things I involve myself in. And I'm also like you said, I'm observing when I need more space. Sometimes I don't have that same energy level that I had 10 years ago. And I'm saying, hey, girl, you got to adjust things down a notch. So, like also just paying attention to how you're feeling physically and mentally too, and making those tweaks.
Okay, so then here as we're kind of winding down, what wisdom can you pass on to those of us who don't have the same self-knowledge yet or experience or bird's eye view like the 25-year-olds, the 37-year-olds who really need it?
Well, I do feel like articulating a vision of what you want your life to be. So I'm a big fan of writing a long form vision of like, here's where I am, here's where I'd like to be in 10 years, writing out everything you think you want to do and where you want to be work wise, where do you want to be married, do you want to have kids, do you want to travel to Spain? Like, what do you want to do? What are all those bucket list things? And then start to just orchestrate that life. It to me that was one of the most profound things I learned in a business at a business conference was to write out a long form vision because it was the first time I actually thought of like, what do I want? I was a young mom. I started a business. Clients wanted us to do this. I added that. Like it was so many other people's visions that I was responding to. And then when I took control of like, this is the life I want, that it became a lot easier to say yes and say no to certain things because they didn't really fit my long-term business vision. So to me, that I think would be a place to start if you're just not feeling happy and fulfilled, and revisiting it because things change. You get married and you want different things with your spouse. I'd love to spend more time with them. So how do we play golf together, or how do we find time outside of parenting to spend together? So your vision can be tweaked, but just really thinking about the next 5 or 10 years, I think it's a really good exercise to ponder.
Hmm. I love it because, what you began with here in this conversation was vision and really painting the Delta picture, and understanding what that could be and then being
Well,
able to do it.
yeah, if you don't know where you're heading, how do you know you're going on the right path? Or, so if you're just letting life happen to you, it's very difficult to know, where you might be off the wrong path. I don't say I love to travel and experience things, so I'm always open to something unexpected. I mean, I think that's the way to live, but doesn't mean you don't have intent in how you're getting to the destination.
Right. Kind of like we were talking about with companies earlier, is like you've got this focus and then, okay, opportunities come. You get to decide,
Correct.
you know,
Correct.
fine.
Yes. 100%.
Hmm. So interesting. So then, kind of like a softball reflection, final area of question is sitting here. How do you feel looking back about your own potential and reflections on it personally and professionally?
Well, I'm an overachiever, so of course I think I could have done more. I probably should have taken on an investor and brought one of my technologies to the marketplace. I mean, there's just so many things that I think I could have done or wished I would have leaned into harder earlier in my career, but I have zero regrets. I really have appreciated both the really epic, lovely times, and I've appreciated some of the hard times. Some of the hard times have been the best lessons for me of what not to do ever again. So I definitely loved kind of all the experiences. Not easy when you're going through things, but it's definitely great to reflect when you've come out of a tough scenario and moved past and found a way to be happy and fulfilled again. So yes, I there were things I think I could have done at a higher level, but I just really don't have any regrets.
That's cool to hear you say that because it sounds kind of, you can identify the areas where you're like there could have been more here, but to not regret it. That's
Hey, and
a nuanced
I'm not
one.
done yet. So there it
That's
is.
that's right. But I think that's key because as humans, of course, we're going to have doors we wish we would have opened. But then it's kind of like what I'm hearing from you is no matter the good or the challenging, you're grateful here now.
Absolutely.
And it's like,
Uh,
so things have been missed. Of course, it's human life, but you're still grateful here now. That's like key piece there, I think.
yeah, being grateful, such a missed opportunity if you're not. I mean, even for the bad things, I've learned things about myself through such really challenging times. So that in itself was worthwhile to me.
Hmm. Well, Kathy, you've given me so much to think about.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciated being with you. I could spend more and more time with you, Catherine. I love it.
Let's just keep talking. Everybody, I know that if you felt it, I feel it. It's such a power up conversation. It's going to require like a lunch by yourself to like sit and think after.
Or
Maybe write
ping
a
me.
vision.
Yeah, no, I definitely have a framework for visioning. If anybody is interested, I'm happy to share.
Yeah,
So,
can we maybe get that in the link to that I can share along with this?
absolutely, sure.
Ooh, that would be
We'll send
so
that over.
good. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for the all the percolating and being such an example of a life fully lived.
Aw,
That is all about who you are, what you do. Is that there's something about fullness and like leaning in and like you said, gratitude for everything. So you're such an example to so many. Thank you, Kat.
oh, That's such a lovely compliment. Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate the kind words.
Awesome. Everybody, tune in for next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform. You can catch more episodes and be notified of newly released episodes by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or subscribing on YouTube. For more information on the Expanders Podcast and The Skinny Platform, visit our website, www.theskinnyplatform.com.